Courage and Consequence. Pardon me while I try to control my laughter. That's the title of the new book written by the so-called Bush's brain. See, it says right there. The former senior advisor to President W defends his boss, but there are many critics like author and activist David Swanson. Mr. Swanson, thank you so much for joining us today. Are you laughing at the title of this book, too?
Yes, it's hilarious that courage would be in there. And, you know, I haven't read the book, but I've read quite a few reviews of it, most of which recommend not reading it. It's apparently quite boring. I think people were expecting admissions or confessions or exposures of someone's sex life or something. I don't know what they wanted, but I guess there is quite a bit of personal life stuff in the book, but people aren't really interested in that. They're interested in the crimes and machinations of this man, and he appears to deny everything.
Okay, Mr. Swanson, you know, you said you were basically telling us that it doesn't really have the meat. It doesn't have the juice that everybody wants. I don't know. I mean, let me read you a quote from the book itself. George W. Bush walked through the front door exuding more charm and charisma than is allowed by law. I mean, pick up the pom-poms already.
Yeah, it's silly, it's funny, but not many people take that seriously. I mean, this is a man who was a leading force in taking us into an illegal and aggressive war in Iraq on the basis of lies, who was there in the White House Iraq group cooking up the lies. And apparently in the book, he maintains that even George W. Bush, who of course didn't want a war, would not have gone to war probably if not for the WMDs. Or perhaps he means the mistaken belief in the WMDs or something, even though he was key in inventing those lies. And they knew they weren't there, and they pushed the lies on us. And his confession is apparently that he admits he was not aggressive enough in pushing these lies into the media, as if he didn't almost daily tell Fox News what the news was going to be. It's a little bit funny, but you know, it gets very tiresome. This is a book apparently in which Karl Rove continues to claim ties between Iraq and Al-Qaeda, despite those lies having been exposed over and over again. He cites in the book the Senate Intelligence Committee report on the war lies as if it didn't conclude that there were any. So this is a book by someone who's become quite comfortable with brazenly lying, who's there on Fox and in the Wall Street Journal and routinely commenting as an uninterested observer on his own crimes. And that appears to be what this book is about.
Well, speaking on your note about Iraq, there is one title that I don't think he's really parsing words here. The title of that chapter is Bush Was Right on Iraq. So, I mean, clearly a case of what you're saying there. The other thing I wanted to bring up, I mean, whereas there are omissions that, or things that people want to see in the book that aren't apparently there, he does put other things in there which are kind of, I mean, at least in my opinion, a little bit laughable. He writes at one point in the book, I often reminded people to put political considerations out of their mind and instead focus on making good policy. You have a reaction to that?
This is someone who unconstitutionally and probably illegally ran a political operation out of the White House on our dollar, who used the cabinet officers and the staff of our government to play political games and to do actions in states and in districts on the basis of politics. This is someone who is a key figure responsible for political prosecutions, for political prisoners in this country, for former governor of Alabama, Don Siegelman, and former Democratic fundraiser Paul Miner being in prison for non-crimes. This is someone who was behind the hiring and firing of U.S. attorneys, of top prosecutors in our Justice Department for political reasons. So when he talks about non-politics, I mean, this is a guy who, it was publicized, his mocking and scorn for the religious voters who back Republicans, who in this book apparently goes on about his religiosity. So I don't take him very seriously.
Okay, so you don't take it very seriously. It doesn't sound like you're telling people to take this book very seriously. 600 pages, very long, a lot of omissions, as you're saying, a lot of things in there that people want to see, and a lot of things that that are in there that people may really have a good chuckle at. David Swanson, thank you so much for joining us today and talking about Karl Rove's new book.